The mockery begins. The arena was louder than thunder. Thousands of alien voices shouted together, shaking the walls of the giant Colosseum. Creatures from every corner of the galaxy had come to see the show. Tall insect-like warriors clicked there, sharp legs against the ground. Scaly reptilian hunters hissed in excitement, and winged avians flapped their feathers, filling the sky with dust. All of them were waiting for the cages to open, waiting for the beasts to appear. But first, their eyes turned toward the center of the arena. There stood a single human girl, small and fragile compared to the massive aliens around her. She wore no armor, no weapon hung at her side, and her hands trembled slightly. To the crowd, she looked like a lost child, not a fighter. The laughter began softly at first, then grew louder. "Look at the tiny human," one alien shouted, his voice full of scorn. "She will not survive even a second," another hissed. The words spread through the crowd like fire. Everyone mocked her, everyone laughed at her. Their laughter was cruel, sharp, and merciless. The girl kept her eyes down. Silent, she heard every insult, every cruel joke, but she did not respond. Her heart beat fast inside her chest. But her face remained calm. She knew what was coming. She knew the reason she was here, and she knew something the aliens did not. From the shadows at the far end of the arena came a deep growl. The crowd fell silent for just a moment. The sound was low, rumbling like a volcano waiting to explode. Then came another growl, and another, until the ground itself seemed to tremble. Chains rattled, heavy locks clanged. The cages were alive with movement. Inside them were the dragons, not ordinary beasts, but alien dragons, creatures feared across countless worlds. Each one taller than the arena gates, with scales as black as night and eyes burning like fire. Their wings were folded but still, stretched wide, covering the cages in shadow. When they roared, the air shook like a storm. The laughter of the crowd turned to screams of excitement. Many aliens leaned forward, hungry to see the blood that would follow. For centuries, these dragons had killed warriors stronger than armies. No gladiator had ever faced them and lived. And now standing before them was a human girl. It was a joke, a cruel entertainment for the galaxy. The crowd shouted bets on how fast she would die. 10 seconds, one alien laughed. 5 seconds, another barked. None of them believed she could last even a breath. The girl slowly lifted her head. Her eyes met the cages, her lips pressed into a firm line. The dragons moved inside, slamming their tails against the metal, sparks flying. They wanted freedom. They wanted blood. The arena master raised his clawed hand and shouted, "Let the trial begin." With a thunderous crack, the locks shattered. The cages swung open. The ground shook as the dragons stepped out, one after another. Their roars shook the hearts of every living being in the arena, even the bravest aliens. Took a step back. The fire in the dragons' throats glowed like suns ready to explode. The crowd screamed in fear, but also in thrill. It was the moment they had been waiting for. The moment the little human girl would be turned into ash, and yet she did not run. She did not cry. She did not even move back. She simply stood her ground, her small figure a speck of light against the massive beasts. The aliens shouted louder, calling her insane, calling her foolish. But a few among them grew quiet. They saw her calm eyes, her steady breathing. There was no fear in her face, only something else, something none of them could understand. The dragons stopped just a few steps away from her. They roared so loud. The sand beneath her feet lifted into the air. The sound could have shattered bones, yet she did not flinch. Her hair blew back from the force. Her clothes shook, but her eyes locked on the largest dragon, the leader of the pack. The crowd waited for her to scream, waited for her to beg, waited for her to run, but she did none of these things. Instead, she opened her mouth, and in a soft but clear voice, she whispered words no one could understand. It was not human language. It was not alien tongue. It was something older, deeper, a sound that cut through the roar of the beasts. The dragons froze, their fiery throats dimmed. The largest one tilted its massive head. The crowd gasped. Silence fell over the arena. The human girl had spoken. And the dragons were listening. The laughter of the aliens died that instant. Their mockery turned to confusion, and for the first time in history, the galaxy saw something it never expected. A human girl, standing alone, face to face with alien dragons, and instead of being destroyed, she had made them pause. The crowd held its breath. The trial had only just begun, but already nothing was as it seemed. The first roar. The silence in the arena did not last long. The crowd began to murmur, voices full of confusion and disbelief. How could the dragons pause because of a human's whisper? It was impossible. It was unnatural. It was something that had never happened before. The girl stood calmly in the sand, her small figure glowing under the bright alien lights. The dragons stared at her, their fire fading, their wings twitching as if they were unsure. The largest dragon tilted its head closer, eyes burning like two suns. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the beast to tear her apart. Then, without warning, the dragon unleashed a roar so powerful that the entire arena shook. The roar was not just sound, it was force, it was fire, it was fury. The ground cracked beneath the girl's feet. Stones flew into the air. The blast of hot wind sent aliens tumbling backward, wings snapping and tails whipping the sand. The girl's hair whipped wildly around her face, her clothes almost ripped apart from the force. But she did not move, she did not run. Her eyes stayed locked on the dragons, unblinking, fearless. Her lips moved again, whispering the strange language that only the beasts seemed to understand. The other dragons followed, their leader, each one raising its head and roaring together. The sky itself trembled. The clouds split apart above the open Colosseum. The sound echoed through the galaxy, reaching even the tallest towers of alien cities. Every creature present felt the sound in their bones, and yet, through the deafening roar, the girl's voice still reached the dragons. Soft, clear, and commanding. The crowd went mad with fear and confusion. Some screamed that the girl had cursed the dragons. Others shouted that she was a witch, a demon, something dangerous that must be destroyed. The alien warlords in the high balcony leaned forward, their eyes sharp and suspicious. If this girl had power over the dragons, it threatened their entire rule. For centuries, the dragons had been the ultimate weapon, untamable, unstoppable, and now a fragile human girl was bending them to her will. The dragons' roars slowed, their flames dimmed, one by one. They lowered their massive heads, their sharp horns glinting in the light. Their heavy breaths blew clouds of smoke across the arena. The human girl raised her hands slowly, her small fingers spread open as if greeting an old friend, and to everyone's shock, the largest dragon pressed its snout gently against her palm. The sound that came next was not a roar. It was a deep rumble, almost like a purr. The beasts were calming, their fury melting away under her words. The alien audience froze, their laughter gone, their voices silenced. Not even the strongest warrior had done this, not even the greatest general had survived this close to the dragons. But here stood a human girl, alive, unharmed, and in control. Whispers spread across the crowd like wildfire. "She controls them," one alien hissed. "No, it's a trick," another spat. "She is dangerous," a third muttered, trembling. The fear in their voices was real. The mockery had turned into unease. The galaxy's strongest predators were bowing to the weakest creature they had mocked only moments ago. The alien arena master clenched his clawed fists, his tail thrashing angrily. This was not the entertainment he promised the crowd. This was not the humiliation of a human he had planned. Instead, the girl was stealing the moment, stealing the show, and worse, stealing the loyalty of the beasts that were meant to kill her. The girl's voice grew stronger. She spoke more words of the ancient tongue, her tone calm but commanding. The dragons circled her now, not as predators, but as guardians. Their tails swept across the sand, creating a wall of dust around her. Their wings stretched wide, shielding her from the world. To the crowd, It looked like the dragons were protecting their queen. The alien leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. For the first time, they felt something they had not felt in centuries: fear. If one human could do this, what would happen if more humans learned the same power? Would the dragons rise against their alien masters? Would humans one day rule the galaxy? The largest dragon let out one final roar. But this roar was different. It was not filled with rage. It was deep, proud, and full of power. The kind of roar that announced loyalty, not hunger. The kind of roar that told the galaxy the beasts had chosen their side. The girl stood in the center, her hand still resting on the dragon's snout. Her calm eyes scanned the crowd. She saw their fear, their disbelief, their anger, and for the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. Not because she had won, but because she knew the truth. The dragons had remembered her voice, and this was only the beginning. The arena, once filled with cruel laughter, now trembled with silence. Every alien present would carry this image forever. The day a human girl spoke to dragons, and the dragons obeyed. The girl speaks. The arena stood frozen. Thousands of alien eyes locked on the fragile human girl, standing between monsters. The dragons, who once crushed armies with a single swipe of their tails, now stood quiet around her. The crowd could not understand what they were seeing. Some aliens pressed their claws into their own arms, just to be sure they were not dreaming. Others whispered prayers to their strange gods, believing this was a vision or curse. The girl raised her head slowly, her lips trembling. But this time, her voice was not a whisper. It was stronger, sharper, like an echo from the past that refused to die. The words poured out of her mouth, flowing like a river, an ancient language, unknown to the galaxy, yet familiar to the beasts. The dragons lifted their heads in unison, their burning eyes glowing brighter. They understood her, every sound, every rhythm, every command. The crowd gasped. The silence broke with cries of fear and disbelief. "She speaks to them," shouted one alien with tentacle-like arms. "No creature can control the dragons," another hissed angrily. The warlords in the balcony slammed their fists against the railings. "This cannot be," one growled. "This human must be destroyed before she becomes a threat," another spat. But down in the sand, the girl continued. Her voice grew louder with each word. Her tone no longer weak or hesitant, but filled with power. It was as though she had unlocked something hidden inside her soul. The dragons lowered themselves, their giant bodies forming a protective circle. The largest dragon spread its wings wide, casting a shadow across the entire arena. And then, in a moment that would echo through history, the beast bowed its massive head to her. The sound that followed was not a roar of rage. It was a deep call, a sound that shook the bones but carried respect. The other dragons followed, bowing their heads, one after another. The girl stood in the middle, her hair whipping around in the hot wind, her eyes glowing with confidence. She spoke again, and the crowd fell silent once more. Though they could not understand her words, they felt the weight of them. It was as if the very air bent to her command. Suddenly, one of the smaller dragons moved closer, its golden eyes focused on her, its breath hot against her skin. The alien crowd screamed, thinking it would devour her, but instead, the beast lowered itself until its snout touched the ground before her feet. The girl placed her hand gently on its scaled head. The moment looked impossible, unreal, yet it was happening before their eyes. Fear spread like poison through the stands. If the dragons were no longer weapons of chaos, but loyal to a human girl, then everything would change. The alien warlords exchanged nervous glances. Their empire was built on fear. Fear of the dragons. But if that fear belonged now to a human, their rule could collapse in an instant. The arena master, furious and trembling, shouted commands to the guards. "Stop her! Stop the girl!" he roared. Dozens of armored aliens rushed forward, their weapons glowing. They aimed their spears, their blasters, their electric chains. But before they could reach her, the largest dragon let out a thunderous growl. The sound was like an earthquake, shaking the walls. The guards froze, terror filling their eyes. They dared not step closer. The girl turned slowly, her calm gaze scanning the army of guards. She did not shout, she did not beg. She simply spoke one more phrase in the ancient tongue. The dragons reacted instantly, stepping forward, their wings spreading, their tails whipping the ground. The message was clear, touch her, and you die. The audience was no longer laughing. They were no longer mocking. They sat in silence, trembling, as they watched a fragile human command the most dangerous beasts in existence. Every alien in the arena felt the same chill. If humans could speak to dragons, then humans were not weak. They were not prey. They were not fragile. They were something else, something the galaxy had underestimated for too long. The girl's voice softened again, her words gentle, almost like a lullaby. The dragons lowered their wings, calming, yet never taking their eyes off the guards. She turned back to the crowd, her face no longer shy. She looked like a leader, a queen chosen not by crown but by fire and beast. The warlords shouted in anger, but even their voices sounded weak. No command they gave could silence the truth before their eyes. The girl had spoken. The dragons had obeyed. The galaxy had changed in that moment. And deep in the hearts of those who witnessed it, a terrifying thought grew. If one human girl could do this, what would happen if all humans remembered the same power? The arena lights flickered, the sand still glowing from the heat of dragon fire. The girl lowered her hand, her voice finally falling silent. The dragons remained still, guarding her like a treasure. The crowd sat frozen in disbelief. And the galaxy, for the first time, realized that humans were no longer the weakest. They were something far greater. Alien fear turns to shock. The dragons stood like living walls around the human girl. Their giant bodies blocked the light. Their wings stretched wide, their tails cutting lines across the sand. The crowd that once laughed at her weakness now sat frozen. Every alien eye was locked on her, every heart trembling with fear. The air itself seemed heavy, as if the dragon's breath carried a storm waiting to break. High above in the royal balcony, alien leaders whispered to one another. Their jeweled armor glittered, but their voices cracked with worry. This cannot be allowed, one hissed. If she commands the dragons, our power is gone, another muttered. The eldest warlord slammed his clawed hand on the railing, shaking with rage. No human must rise above us. He growled, but beneath his anger was fear, a fear he had not felt in centuries. The girl did not speak to them. She kept her gaze on the dragons, whispering words in the strange ancient tongue. Her voice was steady, strong, like she had spoken it her entire life. The dragons lowered themselves slowly, their massive heads bowing. The ground shook with every movement. To the crowd, it looked like they were kneeling before her. And that sight tore through the aliens' pride like a blade. From the lower stands came shouts of disbelief. She has bewitched them, cried one alien with glowing eyes. No, she is their queen. Another whispered in terror. The voices rose, but none of them laughed anymore. The same mouths that mocked her now stammered with fear. The galaxy's predators were watching their place in the order crumble. The arena master, furious and sweating, shouted again. Kill the human, his voice echoed. Dozens of alien guards charged forward, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The girl did not flinch. She raised her hand slowly, her eyes never leaving the largest dragon. The beast's eyes flared like fire, and with a single roar, the guards were thrown back, their weapons shattered, their bodies slammed into the arena walls. The roar was not just sound, it was force. Like a wave of power tearing through the air, the crowd gasped, some covering their faces, others trying to flee, but there was nowhere to run. Every alien felt the truth in their bones. The dragons had chosen her, and nothing could break that bond. The warlords above argued, their voices sharp. Kill the beasts, one ordered. Control them with shock collars. Another suggested. But deep down, they all knew No chain, no weapon, no army could stop what they were seeing. The girl stood untouched, her small body glowing with courage. While the beasts of legend obeyed her every word, she finally turned her head toward the balconies. Her eyes, though human, seemed sharper than any blade. She did not shout, she did not threaten. She simply looked at the rulers of the galaxy as if she were the judge and they were the guilty. The warlords shifted uncomfortably in their seats. For the first time, their arrogance cracked. They felt like prey. And she was the hunter. The arena, once filled with cruel laughter, now trembled with silence. Every alien heart raced. Every breath came slow. The weak who once mocked humans now avoided her gaze. Even the strongest warriors dared not move, and in that silence, the girl spoke again. Her voice carried through the air like thunder, though her words were still in the ancient tongue. The crowd did not understand, but they felt it. They felt the command, the promise, the warning. The dragons answered her voice. They lifted their heads high, their wings stretching wide as if ready to fly. Their eyes scanned the crowd with fiery judgment. The aliens shrank back in terror. It was as though the beasts themselves were announcing that the age of mockery was over. A young alien child in the stands clung to her mother's arm and whispered, "Mom, are humans dangerous?" The mother could not answer. Her eyes were wide, her lips shaking, for in her heart she already knew the truth. Yes, humans were dangerous not because of their size or strength, but because of something deeper, something no other race had. The girl lowered her hand and the dragons calmed again, but the fear remained, carved into every mind that witnessed it. No one would ever laugh at humans the same way again. The galaxy had been reminded that sometimes the smallest spark could tame the largest flame. And in the high balcony, the eldest warlord leaned forward, his eyes burning with both fear and hatred. "This girl is no ordinary human," he muttered. "She's the beginning of something greater." His words were a warning, not just to the others but to himself, for deep down, even he knew if humans could command dragons, then the galaxy's future no longer belonged to the warlords, it belonged to her. The secret revealed: the arena was still trembling from what had happened. The dragons had bowed to the girl, the guards had been thrown back, and the laughter of the crowd had died forever. But while the aliens sat frozen in fear, the girl herself was not surprised. She knew this moment was coming. She had always known. For years she had carried a secret, one that no one in the galaxy believed. Even on Earth, people had laughed at her father. He was a quiet man, a historian, a seeker of things long forgotten. While others studied weapons or built machines, he studied ruins, stones, and symbols no one else cared for. They said he was wasting his life, but he believed humans had once held a power no one remembered, a power tied to the oldest creatures in the stars, the dragons. When the girl was still small, her father had taken her to ancient ruins hidden deep beneath the mountains of Earth. The place was silent, untouched by time, its walls carved with strange markings. She remembered the chill of the air, the way her footsteps echoed on the stone floor. Her father had touched the walls with trembling fingers, whispering words she did not understand. "These are not just drawings," he told her. "They are instructions, songs, a language written for the ones who listen to dragons." At first, she thought he was only dreaming, but he made her repeat the strange symbols over and over again. Her young voice stumbled at first, but soon the words flowed like music. The language felt alive, like each sound carried weight. When she spoke them, she could almost hear echoes, like distant roars answering from far away. Her father spent years training her in secret. He told her never to speak of it, never to let others know. "The galaxy would kill us if they found out," he warned, "because if this language is real, it changes everything." And he was right. The warlords who ruled the stars relied on fear. They used the dragons as symbols of destruction, wild beasts that no one could control. But if humans could tame them, if humans could speak to them, then all the power of the galaxy would shift. The memory burned inside her even now as she stood in the arena. Her father had died years ago, his work stolen and ignored, but his voice never left her. He had told her, "One day, you will need these words. One day, the dragons will listen to you." And now here she was, in front of the galaxy, proving him right. The crowd could not know her past, but they could see the truth. They could see that the smallest creature among them held the key to the greatest beasts alive. It was not magic, not luck. It was knowledge, hidden knowledge passed down by those who came before. The girl's eyes softened as she remembered her father's last night. He had whispered to her, weak and fading, "You must promise me, child, when the dragons roar, do not fear. Speak to them. They will remember you. You are their bridge, their voice, their chosen." The words had sounded like a dream. But tonight, in this arena, they became reality. The aliens watching her had no idea of this history. To them, she was an impossible mystery. Some shouted angrily, demanding answers. "How does she control them?" one roared. "What is this?" "Cursed power," another spat. But none dared to step closer. The fear in their eyes betrayed them. They knew this was bigger than one human girl. This was something ancient, something older than their empires, older than their wars. The girl placed her hand again on the largest dragon's snout. The beast closed its eyes as though comforted by her touch. She whispered the words of the ruins, words no alien could understand, and the dragon's chest rumbled with deep sound. Not rage, not hunger, but peace. The crowd could only watch, powerless. Whispers spread through the stands. If she can command them, then humans must be dangerous. No, humans are weak. Another argued, his voice shaking. "Then why are the dragons bowing?" came the reply. And with that question, the galaxy's arrogance began to crumble. High above, the eldest warlord clenched his teeth. His empire had been built on fear. And now that fear was slipping from his hands. He leaned toward the others and hissed, "We must find the truth of her power, or destroy her before it spreads." But deep down, he already knew it was too late. The secret was out. The galaxy had seen it with their own eyes. The girl looked up at the balconies, her voice soft but firm. "You thought humans were weak," she whispered. Her words were not in the ancient tongue, but in the common speech. "You thought we were nothing. But you were wrong." Her eyes glowed with quiet fire. "The dragons remember us, even if you do not." The arena fell silent again. The secret was no longer hidden. It was alive, burning, spreading, and no matter what the warlords tried, they could never erase what they had seen tonight. The girl had spoken, the dragons had obeyed, and the galaxy had learned the truth. Humans were far more than they seemed. Asterisk the challenge. The silence of the arena was heavy. The dragons stood calm but alert, their glowing eyes fixed on the warlords above. The girl's hand rested gently on the snout of the largest dragon, her face calm, her breathing steady. She had revealed the secret, and the galaxy had seen it. But the warlords were not ready to surrender their pride. They could not allow a human girl to stand above them. Not in front of the entire galaxy. The eldest warlord rose from his seat, his dark armor shining under the alien lights. His voice carried across the Colosseum like a blade cutting through the air. "If the girl believes she commands these beasts, let her prove it," he thundered. The crowd stirred nervously, their fear mixing with curiosity. "What will he do?" someone whispered. The warlord raised his clawed hand and snapped his fingers. From the shadows beneath the arena, new cages rumbled forward. The sound of chains, the roar of hidden monsters filled the air. The girl's eyes narrowed. She knew this was no simple test. The warlords were calling out their own beasts, creatures bred for war, trained to kill anything in their path. The ground shook as the cages slammed open. From them stepped massive armored beasts. Unlike the dragons, they were cruel creations. Part flesh, part machine, their jaws filled with steel teeth, their bodies covered with spikes and glowing energy cores. The crowd gasped as the beasts snarled, their eyes burning with rage. These were the warlords' weapons. Beasts that obeyed no heart, no soul, only blood and command. Let the challenge begin." The warlord roared. The beasts charged forward, their claws ripping the sand, their mechanical parts hissing with steam. The arena shook as they rushed. Toward the girl, the crowd screamed, some in terror, others in excitement. Would the humans survive this? Would the dragons defend her? The girl did not move. She lifted her hand again and spoke the ancient words. The dragons reacted instantly, their bodies shifting, wings spreading, tails whipping the air like thunder. The largest dragon let out a roar so powerful the clouds above split apart. The other dragons joined, their combined roar shaking the walls of the Colosseum. The warlord's beasts stopped for only a heartbeat, their rage clashing against the power of the dragons. Then the battle exploded. The first war beast lunged with its steel jaws, aiming for the girl. The largest dragon stepped in, its massive head swinging like a hammer. The beast was thrown across the arena, crashing into the stone walls. Dust and rock rained down as the crowd gasped in shock. Another beast leaped, its claws glowing with red energy. But two dragons moved together, trapping it between their tails and slamming it into the ground. The sand cracked, fire lit the air. The girl's voice rose louder, each ancient word pushing the dragons forward. They moved like an army, but also like a family. Every motion flowed with purpose, with unity. The alien crowd could hardly breathe. They had expected chaos. They had expected the girl to be ripped apart. Instead, they saw a war they had never imagined: dragons against machines. The sky filled with wings, the ground split under claws. Fire and smoke burned the air. The warlords shouted orders, but their beasts were being torn apart, one by one. They fell under the power of the dragons, their steel armor crushed, their glowing cores shattered. The crowd roared in awe, their fear turning into wild energy. They were not cheering for the warlords anymore. They were cheering for the girl. For the first time, aliens across the arena shouted for a human. The girl stood tall, her hair blowing in the storm of fire and dust. She felt the dragons' hearts beating in rhythm with her words. She was no longer just speaking to them. She was one with them. Every roar they gave was her roar. Every strike they made was her strike. The warlords saw it, and it terrified them. The final war beast, larger than the others, charged with desperate fury. Its steel body glowed red hot, its jaws snapping, its tail slamming the sand. The girl raised both her hands now, her voice booming with the ancient tongue. The largest dragon responded with a roar so deep it felt like the ground itself obeyed. The beast lunged, but the dragon caught it midair. With a single crushing motion, the dragon slammed it into the earth, the ground splitting wide. The battle ended with silence, broken only by the hiss of steam and the crackle of fire. The warlords' pride lay shattered in the sand, their beasts defeated, their challenge destroyed. And before them stood the girl, untouched, guarded by dragons. The crowd erupted, the sound louder than any roar. They cheered, they screamed, they called her name though they did not know it. In their eyes, she was no longer weak, no longer fragile. She was a warrior, a leader, a force they could not deny. The warlords tried to hide their fear, but their eyes betrayed them. They had hoped to prove the girl a fraud, but instead they had proven her power. And deep inside, each one knew the truth. The galaxy's future was shifting, not toward them, not toward their empires, but toward the human girl who commanded. Dragons, the dragon's daughter. The arena was silent after the battle. The smoke of burning machines curled into the night sky. The sand was cracked and blackened, and the broken bodies of the warlords' beasts lay scattered across the ground. The crowd, which once mocked the human girl, now stood on their feet, eyes wide, hearts pounding. They had seen the impossible. They had seen the dragons obey, fight, and win for her. And in that moment, the galaxy itself began to change. The girl stood in the middle of the arena, her hair tangled with dust, her clothes torn from the storm. Yet she looked unshaken, her eyes burned with quiet fire, her breath steady as if she had always belonged. There, The largest dragon lowered its massive head beside her, its eyes glowing softly, no longer in rage but in loyalty. The girl reached out and touched its snout once more, her hand small against its endless scale. The beast rumbled deep in its chest, a sound that shook the ground. But this was not fury, it was devotion. The crowd gasped as the dragon bent further, lowering one great wing to the ground. It was an offering, a gesture no alien had ever witnessed. The girl hesitated only for a moment. Then she stepped onto the wing. The dragon lifted her gently, raising her above the sand, above the smoke, above the broken machines. She rose higher and higher until she stood upon the dragon's back. The crowd screamed, not in mockery, not in hatred, but in awe. From the high balcony, the warlords stared in silence. Their empires had been built on the belief that dragons could never be tamed. And yet before their eyes, a fragile human rode one like a queen. Their pride crumbled, their arrogance burned. One warlord muttered, his voice shaking, "She is no girl, she is the dragon's daughter." The name spread like wildfire through the crowd, shouted from mouth to mouth until the entire arena echoed with it. "The dragon's daughter, the dragon's daughter." The girl lifted her hand, her voice rising above the chaos. She spoke in the ancient tongue, her words rolling like thunder. The dragons roared together in response, their voices shaking the stars. It was not a roar of rage, it was a declaration, a vow of loyalty, a promise of unity. The sound reached beyond the arena, echoing through the cities, the mountains, the skies. Aliens far away stopped and turned toward the sound, their hearts trembling as they realized the galaxy was no longer the same. The warlords tried to stand tall, but even their voices shook. "She cannot be allowed to live." One hissed, "She will destroy us." Another growled. But none of them moved. None dared to give the order. They knew the truth. If they raised a hand against her, the dragons would burn them alive before they could blink. Their power was slipping from their fingers, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The girl's eyes scanned the crowd, her gaze sharp and unbroken. She had been laughed at, mocked, treated as nothing. But now every alien bowed their head. Every warrior lowered their weapon. Even the strongest predators of the galaxy dared not meet her eyes. In their hearts, they knew humans were not weak. Humans were not prey. They were something far more dangerous, far more powerful, and this girl was living proof. The largest dragon spread its wings wide, lifting her higher. The wind whipped across the arena, blowing through the crowd like a storm. The girl stood tall on its back, her hair flying, her eyes glowing with purpose. She raised her hand one last time, and the dragons roared together. The sound was not just heard, it was felt. It shook the bones of every living being. It carved itself into memory. And in that roar, the galaxy understood the message. Humans would never be mocked again. The warlords bowed their heads in silence, their pride broken. They knew they had witnessed the rise of something unstoppable. The girl who stood with the dragons, the child of Earth, had become a symbol that would live forever. The crowd cheered louder than ever, their voices united in one name, the dragon's daughter. And as the girl looked out across the galaxy from the dragon's back, she whispered to herself, her father's words echoing in her heart, "This is only the beginning." The arena, once filled with laughter and scorn, now bowed in awe. The girl had risen from mockery to legend, from weakness to power, from human to the dragon's daughter.